clap.
Yeah. Wow.
Woo! Ball rolling out. Yeah.
I get to talk again.
Oh, only 2 minutes, sir. 2 minutes, sir.
I know I can speak for an hour on this man, and I refer to Milan as my son, but he would be the firstborn, but you are like second son. And I've gotten to see him, I mean, really the youngest tentmaker that we've had. You've been coming for quite a while. And you're so creative, you know, he does photography and all kinds of things. The thing that really stuck out for me about Isaac is that he's involved, he does this mission trip to go down to South America someplace.
Wow.
And he was telling me how they go out to the remote places and they live off the land where they have to catch and cook and eat their own food, and it's pretty rugged. And he took Jolynn last month. Probably didn't have that much ruggedness, but still, I admire the fact that you know, you're willing to just submit yourself to God and to be a blessing to all the people that you have in contact with them. So I'm very privileged to have you part of this chapter, and I just want to have everyone here give a warm Tentmaker welcome to Mr. Isaac Martinez.
Yeah.
Is this live? Yes.
No, it's memorized.
Cool. So yeah, we actually went down to South America. We went, when did we go? January 2nd. We were gone for 3 weeks, and it was a blessing. It was awesome. I've been going I've been down there a few times, and it actually originally started as a missions program through Calvary Chapel that was meant to train people who were eventually, if they were to call to missions, then they would have resources and skills to be able to live off the land if they needed to, or whatever called them to somewhere there was no cities or anywhere that they had to work. And it's just kind of, they originally started with like levels, and you know, when you get to level 4, then you're gonna go, you know, catch anacondas, and level 7 you go deeper into the jungle, and now the levels have kind of fallen apart, and now they're just turned into missions trip. But just because people haven't been going, but it's been neat because Jolene went with me, and it was a blessing to really have her down there, and yeah, it was really awesome. But today, I feel like I know everyone here, which is really cool. My name is Isaac, as you all know, and I own a business. It's a cinematography business. So we actually have 2 different brands. One brand is for weddings, so that covers pretty much event coverage, specifically weddings. Every now and then we do get asked to do quinceañeras and birthday parties and things like that, but primarily weddings. And then we have another brand that does commercial stuff. So that just dealing with specifically corporate companies, companies that want rebranding, pretty much marketing, advertising, things like that. And yeah, we do everything cinematography. And it's been a blessing, but it also has been a journey, a huge journey. You know, it's funny because last year when I was back and I went on another missions trip, is when the Lord specifically told me, like, you need to stop playing around and like really just start doing this. And the reason I say that is because I feel like I had my hands in a lot of different things. And I've owned a few different businesses, probably 5 now. Since I was 18, I'm currently 27. And so for over the last 10 years, I've started multiple businesses. A lot of them failed, and I've learned a ton. And now we're moving and just continuing to grow. And that's kind of, and I'll get into a little bit of that later on. And that's kind of what the Lord just really put it on my heart today, is to really talk about being called to business. You know, and really asking that question: are you called to business? And it's a serious question because obviously we're all business owners, right? We're all in the business field. We all are entrepreneurs, and that, you know, why do I bring this up? I don't know. I'm just going to give you facts that the Lord was just putting on my heart, and you guys can kind of wrestle with that and do as you please, however the Lord ministers to you. So So yeah, so is this a question that most business owners, do they ask themselves that, right? Are we called to business? Are we called to business, or are we called to be an employee? Are we called to be in business, or are we called to be a leader? And, you know, being an employee doesn't mean that you're not a leader, right? Doesn't mean that you are capped at income, because most people get into business because of income. They want financial freedom. They want, you know, and then after, once they see that, that's their primary tool to go into this, because if you guys know, and business is tough, like it's not easy, you know, it's not for the faint of heart. Like who the heck dreams about going through struggles and trials and every day of constantly dealing with people, dealing with vendors, dealing with all these different things, product, overhead, and then having to meet that in order to, you know, because most people just want to go to a job and they want to show up, clock in, do their job, and leave. And that's a blessing, but it's also, but business as well is also a, and I think just people are just they're drawn to that. So I want to make sure that people, you know, and the Lord was just really putting this on my heart, of just really understanding, like, are we called to business? Because being an employee and being a business owner, they're honestly they're both the same thing, if you really look at it, right, from a Christian perspective. Because being a Christian means that you're surrendered to God. Being a Christian means that you've given your life to Him, that you're following Him, and that the only difference is you have someone else that's over you. But in reality, you have pastors who are over you, you have other leaders who are over you, you have, so you're always gonna have somebody over you. And when we look at the difference between being a business owner and being an employee, most people are like, oh, I don't wanna be an employee because income, right? I'm gonna have an income cap. But as much as you know, God is the one who gives and He takes away. How much more of that is with our income, right? Because there's most business owners, right? They're making just as much as an employee. So then why are we still in business if you're making just as much as an employee, but you have way more stress, you have way more, just everything, right? Way more, you know, so much more weight to just carry around, but now you just have this title as I'm a business owner. And let's, you know, so are we called to business? And the definition of calling, there's two definitions, and the first one obviously is not it. The loud cries and shouts of an animal or a person, right? Or we have the second one, which is the strong urge toward a particular way of life, career, or vocation. And in our culture at large, it has become the norm to see our calling as a vocation or a career. But what about a way of life, right? Most people nowadays, they say, whenever they hear, oh, I'm called, people not in the church, people who are just the secularism, they say, I'm called to do this, I'm called to do that, I'm called to be this, and they feel this innate, distinct feeling or just separation within their heart, pushing them towards something or pulling them towards something that is normally towards vocation, normally towards a type of work, normally types this and that. And we know that the Industrial Revolution, even now, right, back when it started, has created an opportunity that most people have never seen. Most countries, nobody has ever seen, right? Huge factories, big buildings, and money. Opportunity for money. And money not to be won from intense labor anymore, right? Because when the Industrial Revolution hit, there was, who did it pull to go and pull into the factories? Farmers, right? Housewives. I mean, obviously, a lot of women didn't leave their homes, but still some of them did. And a lot of people who were just from the country, they were pulled into the cities for the sake of money. And a lot of people went because why? They want to take care of their families, they want to take care of, but it was money that pulled them there. But what is it? Was God calling them there? And we know that it's always, you know, and just like since then, it's always been the norm to make a logical decision about why not make money? Why not have a better life? Why not, like, because that's become the norm. Like, ever since that has happened, the Industrial Revolution, it's always like, let's go there, better life, right? Bigger life, bigger this, right? More, not more comfortable, but eventually that leads to comfort. You don't have to work as hard. You can leisure, you can relax, you can enjoy. And that's kind of the same thing even now in today's modern society, right? We look at small businesses booming everywhere. There's, motivational speakers coming up all over the place. Everyone's just getting in front of people and saying, go into business, right? This is the way, and everyone sees it. It's so appealing because everyone sees they can have a luxurious lifestyle. They can be at a place where they can have no cap for their income. And what, I don't know the percentage, but there's how many small businesses close their doors, because they can't keep up with it. I believe it's just because they weren't called to business, and we see that, and a lot of it, even so, that mindset can be justified as far as, I can have a better life, for my family, for charity, for whatever. But going back to that question of, even though they're good motives, are we called there? And so just to kind of give you a couple examples of people who were called in the Bible, called specifically by God, obviously. First example, I shouldn't be a surprise, is Jesus, right? Under parents' rule to the age of 33, God calls him out into his ministry. At the age of 30, calls him out into his ministry, and then he lives 3 years, and then he bears the unbearable weight that, on his shoulders, that all of us, is the reason why all of us have salvation. And then we have Uzziah. If you guys don't know who Uzziah is, he's a king, and he was a king of Judah. He inherited the throne at the age of 16. By the hand of God, he became famous for war across the land, and this is in 2 Chronicles. He became famous for war across the land, and he made new technology, right, at that time, as a new war technology. And it's crazy because this is actually part of history. If you look up, there's actually other historical documents that point back to this. And then he crossed the line because he was not called to. I don't know if you guys know the story, but they were ready to go into battle, and they're waiting for the priest to come light the incense to have the blessing from the Lord in order for them to have success. And he's in a hurry. The enemy just kind of coming in, and he lights incense himself. And moments later, the priest walks in and is like, "What are you doing?" Like, and he was like, "You weren't, we see that he was not called to that task." But he was called. He was called to be king, and in that distinct moment, we could see that he was called to something, and someone else was called to something else. Then we have Abraham, called by God to leave his former land, to venture into an unknown land, and by his faith in God was he rewarded, and it was by his faith was he also justified. Then we have Elijah, accepting a calling that no one else wanted. One person who was destined to a calling that no one else wanted, but compelled by the image of God, rose his hand and rose his hand to be chosen for the task, believing God and walking by faith, for he knew that he was now called to a work and ministry before God, seeing God move in ways that most people will never see because of their lack of vision from God. And just like I was talking about, just my testimony in the beginning, kind of give you guys a little bit of backstory. At age 17, I gave my life to the Lord. At age 18, I started to have this desire to become an entrepreneur. I honestly would tell you I want to be an entrepreneur, and I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't know. I just knew the word, and it sounded cool, and I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And so, and I started to kind of get these ideas for a business, for doing something creative. I was an artist at the time. I was really into illustration. I used to do a lot of illustration, more surreal type of art, and I started to kind of go into graphic design. Shortly around that time, I got involved with a company, a financial service company. I learned a lot about business itself and entrepreneurship, and really understood what that word meant. In the short while that I was with that company, I just proceeded to #1 nationwide in certain ranks and divisions within that company. After that, I just felt this God was calling me out of that, and just because of the people, they were really money hungry. They really wanted they're just all about money. That's it. They didn't care about people. They didn't care about what they were doing. They just wanted money, 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 money. And the Lord was calling me to something more along the lines of missions. And I was just like, all right, well, maybe I could create a business that would, supplement, that would help people like in third world countries, and then I go from there. So left that company, went after that, started a screen printing company, and as I was doing the screen printing company, I also got this crazy idea to start my own clothing line, and I was like, all right, and it was just
Very creative.
I'm like, okay, is there anything you haven't done? Come on.
so I started to do that, but in the midst of that, I got really distracted. I got my passion started to take over my decisions, and it started to pretty much tear me away from what God was calling me to do. And so I continued with the business, but now I was doing it for myself. And I fell away from the Lord. I fell into just multiple addictions, and it's crazy because I was a business owner, and people just wouldn't see that. People wouldn't know that. Hey, like the devil's plans, like what he wants to do is to like really destroy everything. And while I was so a few years after that, I just felt the Lord just really speak to my heart, literally right before I was like gonna smoke out, and so I stopped, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna pray, and then I felt peace, and then I still went and smoked, but then I went and I knew I needed to get clean. I needed to come clean in some way, and it was at that point where I was like going through 2 months of really, I went even deeper just into the drugs I was involved with, and it was just, and I didn't realize that until after, that after I was trying to get clean and, trying to do it by myself, I went deeper into it, making more of a mess of it, and the Lord wanted me to go to Him instead of me doing it by myself. So I literally ended up on my deathbed and was in the hospital, and that's where the Lord, I was just like, all right, God, like, I messed up. I was like, it's over. I'm done. I'm sorry, but if it's time for me to go, then all right, let's go. And I just repented, and the Lord and the doctors were like, we don't know what's wrong with you. Like, you have all this crazy stuff going on and stuff with like my heart, and I was like, all right, well, it is what it is, and I just kind of surrendered everything, and the Lord like miraculously just like healed me. 2 days later, they let me go out of the hospital because they were like looking at my charts. And like, there's nothing wrong with you.
Amen.
Yeah.
You got the problem, there's no problem.
Yeah. So I pretty much, so after I just, was relieved of just everything I was tangled in, I just full-hearted just went after the Lord. And I was still in business. I still owned a business, and I was also working for a company at that time. So I was working for a business. I was working for a company that did a lot of stuff in the entertainment industry, and I just saw while I was following after the Lord, I just continued to see opportunities for business. So I went after them because it was already innate within me, and I was like, all right, well, like opportunity, like just go after it. And a few years after walking with Him, you learn more and more as a Christian. You become more humble, right? You surrender yourself more, And it just came to the point where I was like, Lord, like, am I even supposed to be in business? You know, like, do you even want me here? Because I feel like I'm striving after these things and these goals and all this stuff, and right on the outside it looks good because you're a hard worker, you have goals, like, you know, you're appealing to many people, but I needed to know that the Lord wanted me here, and if not, then I was gonna go get a job. And that pretty much pushed me. So long story short, Lord confirmed it in multiple ways. And one of the ways was, I don't know if Paul knows this, but one of the ways was actually through Tentmakers, because of how I came across Tentmakers. It was gnarly, it was insane. And so he confirmed in multiple ways, but you know, me myself, I've already had gone through highs and lows. I couldn't trust anyone. I couldn't even trust my own thoughts in my head. And I just came to that point where I was really untrusting, and even the Lord was confirming, I still didn't realize, like, God, is this you? Like, are you sure? Because this aligns with what I want, but I want to make sure I don't get what I want. And it was just at this point where, like, I know I'm not gonna trust it, right? I'm just gonna do this, and I'll just do business, and yeah, I'll wait for you to confirm. I'll wait for you to write it in the sky or something. And so a few years passed, and the Lord is putting on my heart while I'm still in business. Lord is putting on my heart to start a cinematography company. And that was like an idea, but I was like, you know, I don't want to wrap myself up with too much. So I was like, you know what? Like, I'll wait. I'll grow the business that I'm at right now, and I'll grow it as, you know, as big as I can. And then when we have the ability to open up a branch for, you know, for cinematography, then we'll do it. And those were my thoughts. Those are my ways. And God was like, nah, like, you need to do it now. And I was like, nah, it's like, I was like, oh God, is that you? Like, are you sure? So it takes him to get me down to South America for the third time to finally really speak to my heart. And it was just like, he just made it really clear, like, you need to stop what you're doing, everything, and you need to do this. And I was just like, and it was prominent. Like, it was nothing I had, like, I mean, the Lord has spoken to me before, but man, this was like, yeah, there was like this fear that was like, if I didn't do it, then I was being completely disobedient. And so it was okay, so I stopped photography business. I had a photography business, and I was still doing, at the time I wasn't doing graphic design or anything, or screen printing. I'd already left that, but I thought, anyways, so going into the cinematography business, I knew that at that point in time, I didn't need any more confirmations, right? And, you know, what's interesting is I was praying and I was asking, and the Lord was showing, but at the same time, he was putting he was leading me in another way, and I didn't want to listen. But when I did finally listen, when I did finally hear, I knew that he had called me into it. So, dropping everything, pretty much revamping the entire business, I had to just walk away from current clients and everything, you know, business that was already coming in for these other jobs, and just sending them out to outsourcing to other people, not taking in any income, which forced me to get a job. So I started to find a job part-time, and I was doing this business, but I knew that the Lord called me. I knew that the Lord wanted me here, and he wanted me to do this. So I was like, all right, Lord, like, you know, if this is what you have for me, then so be it. And man, like, that job was honestly a godsend. And the reason why was because the Lord really started to minister to me through it. Really started to show me leadership, really started to show me just different ways that we can lead, different ways to be just that light in the workplace, right? And that's something that I think a lot of us hear, but being in business, right, especially small business, we know it to the one-on-one. We know it to clients. We know it to maybe one employee, two employees, or maybe a few employees. But do we know it on the scale of doing it to 30 people that we're going to be working with? Do we do it on, you know, and and where everyone knows that you're a Christian, but at the same time, no one else is. And you have a testimony, you're being, that light in that place, and you're not going to cave because of it. And asking again, why is it important that we know we're called to business? Because of trials. Because when we go through those things, does that make sense? Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So knowing why we're called to business. Looking back at trials, right? We go back to the people and examples in the Bible. We have Jesus. He knew he was called to the cross, therefore, because of his obedience, we have salvation. Right? But there was that trial that he was going through. He didn't want to go to the cross. He didn't want to. He was in Gethsemane asking the Lord for this cup to pass from him. We know Uzziah, he was disobedient by pride, therefore punished and obtained leprosy because he didn't repent, but because he touched a work that wasn't his. He was in something that he was not called to, therefore he wasn't cursed, he was punished for it. And then we have just some more encouraging examples. We have Abraham, right? He trusted God, therefore is rewarded by his faith. And we see that he only had faith because he knew he was called. And God is the one who gives us faith, right? When we see, sure, we have different categories of faith. We have the faith of, that's my timer. So we have categories of faith, right? We have faith for salvation, right? We have faith in order to believe God has died for our sins, and we know that that's given us the gift of the Holy Spirit. Then we have another faith, which is to continue. I think there's like two more types of faith. We have one faith. We have the gift of faith, where people just believe God for anything. God is possible, and then it just happens, right? And then there's another kind of faith that is still gifted. It's gifted to us through evidence in a way, and where we know that God's calling us to do something, and when we know it's confirmed and we know it's God, then we just start to believe it. And that's the faith that I believe Abraham had, that he knew he was called, therefore he wasn't going to let anything get in his way to go from the land he was at to the land he needed to get to. And then we have Paul, right? And this talks about more of like a different kind of faith, because when he first came to the Lord, he was a Jew, right? And he believed in something, was passionate about something that was completely against what the Bible really was, but he believed it was right. Therefore, he continued down a path that was ultimately completely against God, disobedient to what God really had for him. But it wasn't until he was, pretty much fully zealous of that passion to kill Christians is when God was like, nope, knocked him off his horse, and obviously brought him to a place of humility. And when his eyes were truly open to that faith, his eyes were truly open to that truth, is when he really was able to see faith, I think, in a healthy way. And because he knew it was God who did it, and it wasn't his own passions anymore. It wasn't other people telling him, but it was God who told him. Therefore, it aligned everything for him to do what he did and what he was called to from that point on. Which kind of brings me towards the end of this topic of, are we called to business? Because if we don't know if we're called to business, then when we go through trials, when we go through struggles, when the industry just decides, the economy just decides to take a dip into the shadows and not turn around for a couple of years, like, are we still going to continue, the path the Lord's called us to? Even if we have to, everything else is closing down on the street and the industry's, taking that turn, like, are we still going to continue down that path? And why is that important, right? Because obviously without vision, with where there's no vision, people perish. Mm-hmm. And But at the same time, Israel, they had vision when they were, technically they had vision when they were in the desert, right? They wanted to go back to Egypt. That was their vision.
Oh.
But the Lord didn't want them to go back to Egypt. The Lord wanted them to continue to the promised land. So, making sure that our vision is from the Lord. Because if it's not, then we're going to constantly be pulled towards something that the Lord doesn't want us to touch, the Lord doesn't want us to do. And even that means even in industries, right? First, it's like the question of, okay, is it even business? Secondly, is it even the industry that we're actually in? And then thirdly, like, is it even the actual calling that the Lord even wants for us, you know, ultimately? So just making sure that we're in the Lord's perfect will and not His permissive will, because He does give us. We do get to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We do get to make mistakes, right? And we do also get to do successful things. And we see it even in churches today, right? Churches are closing down, and even we hear that, I don't know about you guys, but I've been hearing just different pastors, they'll leave the church because of income. You know, there's so many pastors, they leave and they go and they get it, you know, and they start their own business, right? And I've heard them talk about just that they that they found out that it was the wrong industry for them. But they're obviously, they didn't know that they were called from God, because if they did, I don't think they would have left, right? Or if so, if they really had, you know, that true relationship with the Lord, then they would have been called back, just like Paul, right? So, coming to the end, what's the meaning of a tent maker? Anyone?
Anyone besides Paul and Bill?
You're looking at me.
I was trying not to. Using your business as the mission field.
Using your business as a mission field, right? So, if we're called to business, then we're called to be a tent maker, right? And by default, when you become a Christian, anywhere you go is technically a mission field. So then when we have a business, it's just when you fall into businesses when you actually get put in the category as your tent maker. So if we are called by God and we have vision from the Lord, then it's obviously not to build a big enterprise just for the sake of it, right? It's to do and to further the kingdom of the Lord, and making sure that we're constantly doing that, and really going down the list of all the duties that we're doing, and seeing if that's really what we're doing from our day to day. Because obviously, you know, there's tasks and things that we need to do, but is this all pushing forward toward, you know, to further the kingdom, in order to make a change in the areas that we're called to, because we should be called there. And just leave you guys with just one last thought. It's better to be fruitful than to be productive. And remembering that if we're called to business, the Lord will provide, no matter what. We can have goals, we can have just obviously you know, income and strategies and everything put in place. But it's better to be fruitful than it is to be productive. And if we're choosing to be productive over being fruitful, then is our spirit really growing? Are we really growing in the Lord, or is our business growing? And making sure that as we're growing, a lot of times it's small growth, so that way both you and your business are growing at the same time. Not your business first, and then you'll catch up later.
Yeah.
So that's kind of all I have. Thank you.